Welcome to the Northern Business Podcast, formerly Business Unmuted, sponsored by Virtue Motors, one of the UK's largest motor retailers. Check out its website at virtuemotors.com. I'm Graham Robb, owner of Recognition PR, one of the longest established PR firms in the north of England. Each week we're talking to people in business and economic experts about the big issues that are affecting the region of the north of England. Make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. In the studio today we have Aman Chalal, who is the CEO of Tapered Plus, which is based in Stockton and designs and supplies flat roof and insulation solutions. And down the line we've Charles Maltby, Programme Director of Huddersfield Unlimited, the business-led organisation that stands for the town of Huddersfield. And also down the line we've got Carl Beckett, founder of Care to Inspire and renowned resilience coach who's based in County Durham and Northumberland. And also later on we've got a feature with our colleague Josh Havikin, who's out and about looking at what's happening in business elsewhere in the region. But let's start by talking about things that are happening in the worlds of our guests. Charles Maltby, you're in Huddersfield. There's been a lot going on in the economy this last few weeks, particularly inflation and what's happening in people's shopping baskets, and even a suggestion by the government at the weekend that maybe there'll be a voluntary price cap on supermarket foods. How do your members of Huddersfield Unlimited view the economy at the moment?
It's a good question, Graham. The inflation rates are a function of many different things, energy being probably the prime one, although what's happening in Eastern Europe clearly doesn't help from that perspective when it comes to food supply, etc. But we've got to find a way through it. There needs to be chance for the economy to recover through all of those things, interest rates to get back to what people expect them to be so we can manage and move forwards. And it's down to individuals and their responsibilities perhaps to be careful and think about things and make sure that they can afford whatever it is that they're looking after, and start with the essentials. We need a roof over our head, we need food to eat, etc. So people need to keep focused around that. And I think despite all of that, there needs to be government money supporting the right initiatives and the right activities so that people's salaries, clearly we have a focus around Huddersfield, bringing the right high value salaries into Huddersfield means that people can sustain these things a little bit more easily as the clock ticks forward.
Well, we'll come back and talk about Huddersfield in a minute. Let's bring in next, we've got Carl Beckett. Let's just pull him in. You're in the countryside. We're going to talk about why you're in the countryside in a minute. But seeing all the farm fields behind you and so on, one of the issues on the price of food is, of course, the price of producing food here in the UK. And it strikes me that some government policy contributes to the price of food. There's environmental policy encouraging farmers to rewild, and there's also Brexit policy by not lowering tariffs on the import of food from elsewhere. So there's lots of different policies that could get the price of food down. Does the government need to intervene, or, as Stuart Rose, who is from Asda now, Lord Rose says, he says it's clumsy to try and cap food prices. What's your view on the matter?
Well, thank you, Graham. I think food costs, they are going to hopefully slightly come down with commodity prices and the fuel slightly coming down. But I think, intervening in the market is not. I'm not sure. I think I agree with Stuart Rose that actually intervention in a market which is very tightly squeezed is not maybe going to be the way forward. I mean, we've got farmers, one of the most efficient and productive communities in Europe, and they do an excellent job. Sometimes they don't get the fair price for their food, and it's always tight at the market end. So I'm slightly against intervention. Of course, food costs are hitting, those on the lowest incomes at the moment. So, that is a concern. And it's been making the industry as competitive, making sure that regulation is fair and reasonable and allows them to do their job.
And of course, there is some intervention in the market, isn't there, with all the things like I was saying, the rewilding and the regulation that farmers have to deal with. That's intervention in a negative way in some ways, if you're from the perspective of some farmers, or there's intervening in the market by setting tariffs so that food producers elsewhere in the world have their goods artificially priced when they come into the country. So there is intervention somewhere.
Yes, there's going to be intervention. I think, the rewilding projects, there's an opportunity in Brexit to help on conservation in the places that I am here. Absolutely beautiful part of the world, but at the same time, we have an ever increasing world population. We need to produce that food. So it's about how we can help with those exports and imports as a government to make the regulation as easy as possible for them.
Okay, Carl, let's turn to Aman in our studio. Thanks for coming in, Aman. Now, you've heard the people talking about inflation on relation to food. Now, you run a business that provides goods to the construction sector. What's inflation like in your sector?
We do, Graham. It's inflation is rampant within construction. Labour costs are going through the roof. The supply chain has been severely disrupted, so inflation is a real problem, and we've actually seen companies go into administration because they can't control the inflation.
And what do you think should be done to get this sorted out? Is it going to be left to the market, particularly in construction, or are there interventions, including the Bank of England putting up interest rates, that can calm it down? It might be a brutal way of doing it. Jeremy Hunt even suggested he might accept a recession if it was necessary to get inflation down.
I think, Graham, simply we need to invest more into UK construction. The government needs to invest more. We need to invest in programmes and energy efficiency. I think that will solve a lot of problems.
Your products, tell me about the product. We'll talk about each of our guests' different businesses now. So what about your products? How do they work?
We design and supply tapered insulation, Graham. So we supply insulation for flat roofs, which supplies water drainage plus thermal efficiency.
Now, lots of flat roofs. I mean, we're in a building now that has a flat roof, and it's built in 2007. I've said this on the programme before, that this building is relatively modern, yet amazingly, a lot of heat escapes through its flat roof. Bizarre. I would have thought modern rules and regulations less than 20 years ago would have stopped that.
Yeah, regulations are improving all the time. 13.4% of the UK population's in fuel poverty, so retrofit has to be top of the agenda.
So how easy is it to retrofit a flat roof building with your kind of solution, and what's its efficacy? How does it work? What does it do?
Really simple. We get up on the flat roof, we design it, we supply the insulation scheme, waterproofing goes on top, so you've got a brand new roof with a 20-year product warranty plus energy efficiency, so you'll get your payback really quickly.
Okay, and what level of difference would it make? I mean, take a building like this commercial building. It's an office block with a flat roof. Is it going to make a radical difference, the heat escaping?
It will. If we look at energy costs, they're actually double what they were in October 2021. So the payback is really quick. We anticipate 3 to 5 years as a payback now compared to 10 years previously. So it's worth doing.
And what's the take-up like? How's the business going?
It's going really well. We're up year on year. The construction market's down 30%, but we're significantly up. So we're aiming for over 50% growth this year. Okay,
let's see if that kind of replication of growth can happen in other different sectors. Let's talk about Huddersfield. Huddersfield, Charles, is a brilliant town. It's we're filming this and broadcasting this from Darlington, and I've been Huddersfield many times, and it has some similarities to Darlington, not least of which the town centre is ringed by a ring road, and it has the same kind of demographic. What kind of issues have you faced, and how are you going about dealing with them?
Well, I think the biggest issue has been a lack of general investment into the town area for quite a long time. We actually co-hosted an event recently with our friends at Kirklees Council, the local authority, showcasing some of what's happening in Huddersfield as we speak, which is, believe it or not, over £1 billion of public money going into the town, predominantly in 3 areas. There is the upgrade of the Transpennine Rail link. Huddersfield geographically sits almost equally between Manchester and Leeds, and clearly is ideally suited, therefore, for anyone looking for a location that has access to both of those centres and beyond, Liverpool and York, and even up to where you are in Darlington, etc. The lines kind of come down through here. We've also got the council themselves investing inside that ring road, predominantly that you've just described, with what they refer to as the cultural heart in particular, which is creating a new centre for leisure and more recreational activities for the people who live in the town, where workers perhaps would go at their breaks so they can sit in the outside area or have access to more conducive environments when they're taking some time to relax, etc. And just outside the ring road, the university in Huddersfield has grown hugely over recent years, and they're investing in a new campus, which is all to do with health and well-being, the National Health Innovation Campus, which is actually adjacent to another council initiative called the Station to Stadium Corridor. So building on the investment into the railways, the rather fantastic station that we have has a hotel next door, the George Hotel. That is now gaining a new operator in the shape of Radisson Red, which is fantastic for the North to have an establishment of that nature. But it shows their interest in what the prosperity of the town will be as it grows out. And that station to stadium enterprise corridor adjacent to the university campus, new campus for health and well-being, will hopefully encourage businesses to come and look at the town and invest, create new higher value jobs, put in that private sector investment alongside the public investment, and help us turn the town back into more of a centre than it is at the moment. It historically was a very big centre if you go back to the Victorian era, hence many of the fantastic and listed buildings. A challenge for a man and solutions to do with energy insulation when it's refurbishing the old buildings, but a balance needs to be found between keeping the old and finding a way of moving forwards and progressing these things, at least in my mind. Some of my colleagues might disagree a little with that. But we have to find a way that's meaningful for the people of the town today and their prosperity and how they can cope with current living circumstances and energy price increases and so on and so forth.
Now, you also have a university, and you've got the Innovation Village is connected to the university, isn't it?
Yes.
And there's quite a large number of northern big provincial towns that have universities. Middlesbrough has Teesside University, and you've got Bradford as well. That's a city, of course, but the university plays an important part in the dynamism of your future programme, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, I attended an event a few days ago, which was the 10th anniversary of the 3M Buckley Innovation Centre, an institute the university set up clearly 10 years ago, which is about using some of the university's knowledge and research and know-how and linking it with the local businesses to help them have the right information and access to the right services so they can grow their businesses. There's a local business called Paxman Coolers making caps to be worn on the head to help when people have chemotherapy treatment for cancer and other such things to try and reduce hair loss. Grown fantastically in the town, now accredited to go and sell its products into the USA, which is quite a hard challenge for medical devices and such things. But they're very linked to the university in terms of where some of the research and know-how came from. And obviously other organizations want to do the same. We have an institute for textiles and railways associated with these things, which again are traditional businesses in the town. But the engineering side and the advanced engineering side, there's a lot about additive manufacturing and the 3D printing processes for making metal as well as plastic parts these days that can lead into many of these advanced advanced businesses and technology businesses and so on and so forth, that the university is able to spearhead and support as and when required.
Charles, you're making a very good case for the motto that you stand for Huddersfield. And just tell me how you think provincial towns can hold their own. When you look at the map of Yorkshire and the Northwest, you are in the middle of a triangle of three major cities, Leeds, Manchester and Sheffield. And there are other towns, Dewsbury and Halifax and Huddersfield and others, that are probably facing similar issues in West Yorkshire. How do you cope with this town-city divide? Because it isn't automatically a north-south divide, is it? Within the north, the towns have to hold their own now.
I think, I mean, the centres that you mention each have got different merits and different attributes, and they need to stand up and talk about them more. It's easy for the outside community, be that national or international, to only see the big centres. I mean, we have the, if you like, unfortunate situation that Manchester has two rather large football teams. So the name Manchester is heard throughout the globe, and people know about the place, and it's often used as a reference on a map to describe to people where Huddersfield might be. Didn't used to be like that, some years ago. Huddersfield stood in its own right and recognised things. So each has got its own merits. The places you mentioned are all doing different things or have done different things, and Huddersfield has perhaps fallen a little bit behind in recent times, which is why I want to get it back on the map. But it has many unique sort of features in terms of its location and some of the history and the nature of the history behind that can enhance how those new investment offerings, private and public, can come in and actually help the place grow. We have nothing against the other towns that wish to do similar things. We just would like to see a greater share, if you like, not fall into Leeds, Manchester, and the other big cities, but actually find its way into the smaller areas where there's just as many people and needs from a business perspective to make sure all those things flow in the right direction.
Well, Charles, thank you for speaking up for Huddersfield. It's called Huddersfield Unlimited, the organisation, and it's trying to coordinate £1 billion worth of money that's in Huddersfield already, but making sure it's promoting the town and standing for the town. Thank
Correct.
you. Let's turn to Carl now. Carl, you're in a beautiful setting because your business, you were a managing agent at a chartered surveyors, then you became MD of a care business, but now you do something completely different, and it looks as though what you're going to tell me is a lifestyle choice that many people would want to take. For people listening, Carl is stood in front of beautiful countryside in Northumberland with a beautiful outfit, including a great Panama hat. All of God's children should wear those hats. So tell me about why you're there.
So this is my workplace. I take leaders of organizations out into the wild to help clear their head, develop resilience, if you like, and become better leaders. And, working through my Resilience Valley model and just really using the outdoors as the medium to really unlock their potential, their creativity, make them more impactful leaders. The studies recently about burnout and, Deloitte on an external survey in the US with 1,000 corporate business folks said that they had 77% had expected burnout over the last few years, and Gallup have followed suit recently with a similar survey. So I think what this allows people is to some headspace to think clearly. And especially, we've just obviously come out of the pandemic and now we have other pressures on us now. So I think it's a really important role that, I'm hoping to help businesses sustain and develop and be more resilient.
I got to admit, I know that this works because just a few months ago, on a beautiful day in March, I took to the coast of Northumberland with two business leaders, and we took a day out to crunch through what was happening in our businesses. It was peer to peer, and we walked from Beadnell to Dunstanburgh Castle and then on to Craster, and it was a fantastic. Obviously, the scenery was good and it's very nice, and I'm sure staff watching my Facebook post would have thought, "What's he doing? This is a bit jammy, isn't it?" But actually, it did help develop ideas for the business, and likewise, the colleagues I was walking with fed off me, and we fed off each other. It was very good, and I know several business leaders in Teesside do this, although their walks are 20 miles. I don't tend to go on them. They haven't. I don't know if I'll show you this. They call themselves the Teesside Walkers and Talkers, but you never abbreviate
Yes, I heard
it.
of them.
That's all I'm going to say. You never abbreviate it.
But as
You
said,
structure it though, don't
great.
you?
Yeah, it is. And there's a lot of work that I do on a one-to-one basis, but also I do work in groups. And the one-to-one, you're spending some really quality time away from your business and some real magic happens. And in the groups, as you said before, it's a great bonding place to get to know each other more and to sort of work through issues that you have as a team. So undoubtedly this works. There'll be some science in the future that says the chemistry in your brain works differently in this environment, and I know it works.
Do you structure it though? I mean, it isn't just haphazard. Obviously, you've got a planned walk, and presumably you've got an agenda in your head on how you'll structure the conversation.
And it's about letting the leaders, it's myself acting as a guide to help them become better leaders. So it's a guided walk in the morning or the afternoon, and then followed with a sit down in a cafe or hotel, creating an action plan that you're going to follow through. So there's a lot of structure through with it, but it's about me unlocking the potential of them to become better leaders as a guide. and that's the most important thing. And the agenda, sometimes at each session can be varied and different, but we always have a theme that we follow through over the month.
And what's the best size group? What is, from the point of view of your experience, is one-on-one best, or 2 or 3, or 10 or 12?
I think one-on-one is really powerful. But if you're taking teams out, I take teams up to 12, 8 or 10. But if you have a business meeting, why not go for a walk? You have your agenda, and you can do it in small groups of 3s or 4s. I vary it up to 12 or a 1-to-1.
And man, is it anything you'd ever consider doing? Have you done it like this before?
Yeah, well, during the pandemic, we had a lot of interviews. We were trying to recruit, trying to scale the team, and we did our interviews walking.
Right.
And it was really effective. And listening to Carl there, we probably should do that again.
There we go. I've got a potential customer for you. And by the way, the last of the summer wine country is just near you, Charles, isn't it? Near Huddersfield. So that's good walking country too.
It is, and I endorse what Carl's saying. With one of my other hats on, I do mentoring in a broadly similar sort of sense, and that ability to talk to people on a one-to-one basis and help them overcome difficulties and resolve problems to help them run their businesses better is very key, and it's an essential part of the top end of business, I would suggest.
Carl, how do people get in touch with you?
You can find me on... Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Carl, how do people get in touch with you?
People can get in touch with me on my website, which is carlbeckett.co.uk, or LinkedIn, either or.
Okay, that's great. And Charles, your website, Huddersfield Unlimited, is available for people to see?
It is huddersfieldunlimited.co.uk, or if they want to get hold of me, they'll find me on LinkedIn as well.
I was looking at it today, very good interactive map, and Tapered Plus has its own website. Tapered Plus.
Taperedplus.co.uk, and we're also contactable by WhatsApp, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram.
Okay, that's great. As I said last week, in a new feature for this programme, my colleague Josh Haverkin is out and about speaking to businesses in the north. This week, he's in Northumberland. Josh, over to you.
Hi, I'm Josh Haverkin, and this week I'm up in Northumberland with Merit. It's using off-site construction to build the new hospital at Berwick. It's a really interesting, innovative company that's making huge differences in the building sector. Here's some of the modular designs, and I'm going to speak with Tony Wells to find out a little bit more.
What is different about Merit's solution to traditional building? Nothing's the same. Traditional construction is fragmented. Designers are different from construction people. Construction people subcontract everything down a supply chain, and everything's done on site. In Merit's model, we don't subcontract the design. It's an integrated platform model. It's not open source. We don't sell it to anyone else. We only work for end users. So it's a disruptive innovation in order to create a, hopefully a 10x growth on productivity compared to traditional construction. Didn't really adopt mass automation. Let's say Henry Ford, Taylor in 1910, 1920. And so it's languished in a manual world of, let's say, fragmentation, zero productivity growth, in fact decline. We've produced a product solution for multiple buildings, which can be adapted to any building shape or functionality within certain market sectors. So biotech, pharmaceutical, healthcare, hospitals, as you see now. That type of more sophisticated building works well for our model. And then we deliver the whole thing as an integrated solution. So we only subcontract about a third of the work, and we're progressively automating our production system with robot CNC and a raft of Industry 4.0 automation. In terms of reduction of build time, in the biotech world, we've just completed the Autolus facility down in Stevenage, 7,500 square meters. Normally that project would take 4 to 5 years to go from inception to time to use. We delivered the first phase in 17 months. I was only 54 weeks on site. And we delivered it in the back end of the pandemic. That didn't cause us any issues in an area of inflation, which we gave a fixed price on, which we adapted to. Difficulty with materials, which we also adapted to because it's a product-based solution, and we could buy materials early because we design it, and so we define it, and we can fix the price, and we can fix the design. So in terms of order lists, we saved 3 years and saved 6,000 patients getting a life-changing leukemia treatment, which is spectacularly successful. In terms of a hospital, we're going to deliver Berwick Hospital from access to site in April to around a November finish next year. If we were doing a hospital from a standing start, we could probably do it 5 years quicker than anyone else, and significant cost reduction. Although, our business model is not about low profit, as the construction industry is, because that business model is not sustainable. It's the highest level of administrations right now. So we have to make more profit if we're going to spend 6% on R&D. But that productivity gain more than offsets it. So clients can see, a third of the time construction, and it works first time when they get it. I think if the NHS were to adopt this type of methodology on a larger scale, then it would bring affordability to the NHS in terms of new construction. They could have their hospitals 5 or 6 years quicker. Patients would have improved care. It would be improved, we would have a zero scope 1 carbon solution and improved energy consumption. We would be far better prepared for any future pandemic because we have significant improvement in infection control. But the NHS would get value for money. Patients would get access to better care at an affordable price.
And I also spoke with Marion Dixon from Northumbria Healthcare NHS Foundation Trust. They'll be running the hospital once it's built.
We're delighted that we're going this way to this new design because we can be building it off-site. The weather doesn't affect that in any shape or form. It can be designed specifically as to what we would like to have, and it's already pre-built. So when it comes and then it's erected at the hospital site, there is very little then to do. It's very, very important for us to have local services for local people, to try and make sure that we augment our local economy. We're delighted to be in partnership with Merit. They've worked extremely hard with us. They get the detail of what we need for our patients and for the services going forward. We need to make sure that we future-proof this hospital and bring as much innovation to it as we can. Obviously the IT infrastructure. So we want to really work in partnership with them to get the best that we can for Berwick.
Thank you, Josh. Now, we never know where Josh will be. I'm going to send him out and about over the next few weeks or interviewing interesting people so we get extra content for the Northern Business Podcast. So do join us next week. We were always ready to tell you about what's happening in business in the north of England. And of course, if you run and own a business in the north of England and want to take part, please get in touch with me via LinkedIn, Graham Robb at LinkedIn. Never miss an episode. Like, rate and subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.